My colleague showed me a photo that should never have left our bedroom. It was late Friday afternoon, the sun slanting through the blinds in our open-plan office, dust motes dancing in the golden light. Chris slid into my cubicle, phone in hand, eyes wide but guarded. He hesitated, then tapped the screen, as if he could erase what I was about to see. When he finally let me glance, time stuttered. There she was, Emily, caught in a pose so intimate it felt like a punch to the gut. I barely recognized the room. Our own bed, the same pale blue sheets she and I had picked out together last summer. My mind raced back to last night, winding toward every moment I'd shared with her over the past year. Her laugh as I made pancakes, the way she squeezed my hand in the movie theater, the lazy Sunday mornings we spent tangled up in sheets. Every memory now felt like precious shards of glass, beautiful to hold but destined to slice. "Where did you find this?" I managed, my voice dry, brittle. Chris swallowed. He discovered it on a private forum he occasionally lurked in, closed groups where people traded photos and whispered about the mutual thrill of secrecy. "I didn't know she was selling them," he said. "But it's her face, your bedroom." That ride home from the office was a blur. I kept glancing at my phone, replaying the image he'd shown me. How long had she been doing this? How many times had she sent private snapshots to complete strangers? Names and numbers traded in whispers, credit cards charged in secrecy. My heart pounded with questions I had no right to ask, because if any answer came, the answer would come at the cost of everything I thought we shared. Back at our apartment, I stood in the foyer, keys in hand, heart hammering. I wanted to march in, demand explanations, hear her denial or confession. Instead, I stood outside our front door, listening to the muffled rhythms of our life, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant drone of traffic. I thought of her smile this morning when she slipped my hand in ours. It felt like a betrayal that had already happened, and it hurt deeper than any fight I'd ever imagined. Inside, Emily was cooking. She wore my old t-shirt and her hair was pulled up in a careless bun. The kitchen smelled of garlic and basil, her favorite or mine. I couldn't tell anymore. She turned at the sound of my key in the lock and smiled, as if everything was normal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why I was the last to know that our most private moments had become someone else's entertainment. She set down a cutting board and raised an eyebrow. "Rough day?" I closed the distance between us, the weight of that photo burning in my pocket like a warning. "We need to talk," I said, and the firmness of my voice surprised me. She nodded, the knife poised above a tomato. Her eyes flicked to my phone, then back to mine. "Okay," she whispered. We moved to the living room, where the afternoon sun spilled across the couch like spilled wine. The room was quiet, too quiet, and I felt the space between our memories stretching into an unbridgeable chasm. Emily sank into the cushions, looking smaller than she ever had. I stood over her, the phone burning a hole in my hand. "What's going on, Em?" She sighed and clasped her hands together, fingertips white against her palms. "I can explain," she began, voice low, and in that moment I realized there was no going back. Every plan we'd made, every promise we'd whispered, was about to be tested in a way I never could have anticipated. And as she started to speak, I braced myself for a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. She paused, eyes shining with tears, and I braced myself. I never meant to hurt you," she began, voice trembling like a fragile twig in a storm. "It started last December, after we'd fought about money again. You remember that trip to Chicago we canceled because I overdrew our account?" My jaw tightened at the memory. The roasted chestnuts at Millennium Park, the skyline we'd never seen, the vacation we'd promised each other. "I was so ashamed," she went on. "I felt like a failure, like I'd let you down. Then I met this photographer at a conference, Jenna. She said she knew a way I could make quick cash. I said no at first, but when the alimony account got closer to zero and your student loan payment came due, I started thinking." Her confession tumbled out in halting gasps. First a single tasteful silhouette sent to a private chat group, then another image to someone in Spain who promised me they'd never share it. "I thought I could control it," Emily admitted, her voice cracking. "I thought I'd only send a few and delete them. But the payments came in, and I started to believe I was doing this for us, for our future." Every word felt like acid against my skin. The woman I trusted had been auctioning our intimacy, piece by piece, to strangers who clicked tip to see more. I sank onto the edge of the couch, stunned. The late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, painting stripes across Emily's face, across her tears. I stared at her, at the trembling lines of guilt etched on her forehead, and the only thing I could say was, "How long?" "6 months," she whispered. "Since right after Christmas." My breath caught. 6 months of hidden exchanges, of passwords and private message threads, of me sleeping beside her while someone halfway around the world stared at the same bare limbs she'd wrapped around me that morning. 6 months, I repeated, as if saying it would make it less real. "How many photos?" I asked, voice low. She buried her face in her hands. "Dozens, maybe 100. "No videos," she added quickly, as if sparing me some deeper horror. I stopped before it went that far. I shook my head, incredulous. "You think that makes it better?" She lifted her head, eyes red but defiant. I was trapped. I didn't know how to stop. Trapped, there was the cruel irony. I'd thought we were partners. I'd thought our marriage was a sanctuary. And she'd been living a secret double life in plain sight, right under my nose. "A sanctuary you sold," I muttered. Emily rose and came toward me. She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. "Alex," she said, using my name, her reminder that no matter what, we were bound by vows. But her words felt hollow. Silence stretched between us, charged and jagged. My heart thundered. I fought the urge to scream, to break something. Instead, I grabbed my jacket from the chair and slipped my arms into the sleeves. Emily blinked at me. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Out," I said. I needed air that didn't carry the stench of betrayal. I needed space to think, away from the guilt in her eyes and the echo of every whispered "I love you" we'd exchanged. I walked out into the corridor, the door clicking shut behind me. The building's lobby was dim, the night already breathing against the glass doors. I swallowed and pushed them open, stepping into the cool spring air. Below the streetlights, the pavement gleamed from an afternoon shower. I started walking without direction, each step pounding through my chest. The city around me was alive, couples strolling, traffic humming, neon signs flickering. Everything kept moving, and yet nothing would ever be the same. I let the wind whip through my hair, letting the questions crash through my mind. Could she ever earn my trust back? Would I ever look at her the same way again? And most of all, could our marriage survive this revelation? As I rounded the corner onto a busy avenue, the glow of a late-night cafe caught my eye. Inside, people sipped coffee and laughed quietly, oblivious to my turmoil. I paused at the window, fists clenched in my pockets. In that moment, I realized the fight wasn't over. It was only just beginning. I pushed open the cafe door and was greeted by the warm aroma of roasted beans and vanilla syrup. The bell above me jangled, and a barista glanced up, eyebrows raised as if sensing my unease. I made my way to an empty corner table by the window, the same one I'd sat in months ago when Emily and I first moved into the city. Back then, we'd been so hopeful, dreaming out loud about brunch spots and Sunday markets, sketching plans on napkins. Now, every memory of her felt twisted, like an old photograph dipped in acid. I ordered a black coffee and sat down, phone out, fingers hovering over my contacts. Should I call Chris? His intention to help had triggered this nightmare, but I didn't want to drag him deeper. Or maybe Mason, my brother, the one with hard-earned cynicism and equally hard hugs. I hesitated, then typed a quick text to him. "Dude, need you right now. Can you meet?" Hit send before I could second guess. As I waited, I stared at the street beyond the glass. Cars splashing through puddles, a group of tourists clustered around a map, a jogger passing by without noticing the crack in my world. My coffee arrived, and I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, letting its heat seep into my chilled bones. I remembered the first time Emily held my hand like this, not in a cafe, but on a park bench after a university lecture. She'd been nervous about her presentation, biting her lip between sentences. I'd reached for her hand, just a light touch, but it had felt like electricity. Back then, intimacy had been sacred, a quiet contract between two people. Now, the same intimacy had turned into a commodity sold to strangers behind closed doors. My text buzzed. "Heard you. 10 minutes. Mason was never one for soft entries, and I knew his presence would be exactly what I needed. I downed half my coffee and felt the bitter burn cut through me, clearing my fogged thoughts just enough to plan my next move. Could I really forgive her? Could I even face her without flinching? I replayed Emily's confession, her words about shame and desperation, her trembling admission that she thought it was for our future. Part of me wanted to believe her, clawing in the darkness for a solution. But another part saw nothing but betrayal. I glanced at my phone again, then pushed it aside. I needed space between me and this mess, and a witness who wouldn't hesitate to tell me what I needed to hear. Mason would. A few minutes later, he burst through the door, tall, broad-shouldered, with his signature stubbled jaw and a concern that immediately softened into relief when he saw me. He slid into the seat opposite and snagged the untouched coffee. "What happened?" he asked, voice low but insistent. I took a breath. The words flooded out. Chris's photo, the private forums, Emily's months-long secret life, the sting of every picture sold. Mason listened without interrupting, jaw clenched, fists loose on the table. When I finished, he let out a slow whistle. "That's holy hell, man," he said. "She couldn't come to you? You two had money fights before, but you always dealt with it together." I nodded. It felt like admitting defeat. "I know. I feel like I should have seen it. I feel like I failed her and myself." Mason leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "You need to figure out what you want. Do you want to try to rebuild, or is this game over?" His bluntness hurt, but I needed it. I stared at the swirling crema in my mug and realized my answer wasn't clear yet. Part of me clung to the vows we made, the dreams we sketched on napkins. Another part recoiled at the thought of her lying next to me again, her skin the same, but her trust fractured. I pressed my lips together, feeling the weight of all our shared memories bending under this truth. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I need more time." Mason nodded. "Fine. Take it. But don't disappear into yourself. Talk to her. Get therapy. Whether it's individual or couples, you deserve some support." His words felt like a lifeline, and I grabbed at them. We sat in that cafe for another hour, talking strategy, how I'd approach Emily, what questions to ask, what professional help to seek. Outside, the night deepened. City lights flickered on one by one, and for the first time since I saw that photo, I felt a flicker of direction. The road ahead was murky, fraught with pain and broken trust, but I wasn't ready to walk it alone. And neither, I hoped, was she. The next evening, I steeled myself at the apartment door, Mason's words echoing, "Don't disappear into yourself. Talk to her." I let my key twist in the lock, drawing a deep breath before stepping inside. The living room was dim, only the lamp by the couch burned, casting soft shadows on the walls. Emily sat where I'd left her, knees pulled up to her chest, eyes fixed on some distant point. When she heard the click, her head snapped around, and for a second, I saw raw hope flare in her eyes. I cleared my throat, pushing past the ache. "I talked to Mason," I said, voice steady. She nodded, silent, lips pressed together. I perched on the arm of the couch, holding her gaze as if it were a fragile thing. "He thinks we should try therapy. Couples therapy." The words felt strange, like naming a foreign language. Emily exhaled slowly. "I'd like that," she whispered, voice so small I almost missed it. The apartment felt heavy with everything we'd left unsaid. I closed my eyes, recalling the first time we'd come here together. Huge cardboard boxes stacked in corners, blank walls begging for pictures. Back then, we had entire futures to fill them with. Now, we had this raw wound laid bare in the middle of our home. I opened my eyes again, seeing Emily shrink a little under my scrutiny. "I need you to tell me everything," I said finally. "Not just how it started, but how it kept going. I need to understand the timeline." She nodded, bracing herself as I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. January, bruised checking account. February, first exchange. March, a surge in requests. I prompted her gently, and she spoke. Each month a confession, each detail a fresh cut. How she'd rationalized it at first, telling herself it was just one photo. How she'd ignored her own misgivings as the private messages piled up. How ashamed she'd been to look me in the eye at night. I typed furiously, not wanting to forget a single date or detail. When she finished, I looked up, heart hollowed by the weight of her words. "I want transparency," I said. "You're going to give me access to everything. Accounts, messages, transaction records. No filters." She nodded again, tears brimming. "I understand." That night, we lay in bed on opposite sides, the space between us so wide it felt like kilometers. Instead of sleep, I pored over what she'd given me. Spreadsheets of nicknames, IP addresses, small sums of money, $50 here, $75 there, piled up like the cost of her guilt. Every entry was a reminder of how she'd commodified our intimacy. I closed my eyes and forced myself to breathe, the data crawling under my skin. I woke before dawn, restless. Emily still slept, her face peaceful and ignorant of the storm I carried. I dressed quietly and left the apartment, phone in hand with Mason's number already dialed. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey, I'm at that walk-in clinic you recommended, and I booked you a session with Dr. Patel. 10 a.m. Tuesday. She specializes in trauma and betrayal." His voice was calm, placed like stability in the chaos. "Thanks," I said, voice thick. "I owe you one." I spent the day walking aimlessly, sipping coffee at hole-in-the-wall diners, trying to make sense of the paradox. I loved her, but part of me wanted to walk away forever. By evening, the bruises on my heart had settled into something numb and taut. When I returned home, Emily was waiting, her suitcase by the door. "I thought you might go," she said. "I'm going away for the weekend. I have a workshop in New York." I stared at her incredulously. "You're leaving? On top of everything?" She hesitated. "I need space to think too." My throat tightened. Was this another secret she'd orchestrated without me? "Space," I echoed. "Since when did you start making plans without me?" She bit her lip. I thought it might help. Get out of the apartment, clear my head." The suitcase seemed absurd, like she was packing everything she could find to run from the rubble she'd made. I swallowed hard and stepped forward. "No," I said, voice low. "Not alone." Emily's eyes widened, tears spilling over. "Alex, please. You're not going anywhere until we talk." My words were firmer than I felt. She nodded, silencing herself as I reached out and closed the distance between us. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly when I took her hand. We sat on the couch, fingers entwined, even though every fiber of me still throbbed with betrayal. The city lights flickered through the window, whispering of a world outside our pain. "We'll go to therapy," I said, voice softer. "Together. No more secrets." She leaned into me, burying her face in my shoulder. "Thank you," she murmured. In that quiet moment, I knew the hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the uncharted road ahead. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something unexpected stir. A fragile hope that maybe, with all the truth laid bare, we could find our way back. One counseling session, one confession at a time. That weekend passed in a haze of half-remembered dreams and too loud thoughts. I woke each morning with the weight of Emily's betrayal pressed across my chest, as if her secrets still lay there, unburied. On Monday, I walked into Dr. Patel's office, a quiet room lined with books, comfortable chairs, and the faint scent of lavender. Emily sat beside me, fingers clenched in her lap, eyes darting between me and the therapist. Patel greeted us warmly and asked us to start wherever felt right. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came, just the thunder of my heartbeat. Emily drew in a shaky breath and began, voice low, recounting the guilt that drove her to sell our photos, how she'd felt powerless and ashamed. I watched her, noting the tremor in her hands, the way her shoulders rose and fell with each confession. Then she paused, and I realized it was my turn. "I felt like my whole world cracked open the day I saw that photo," I said, voice barely above a whisper. I kept replaying her laughter, her touch, everything we'd built together, and wondering if any of it was real. The admission felt dangerous, as if naming my pain would make it spread. But Dr. Patel nodded, encouraging me to go on. I confessed my anger, my nights spent scanning our bank statements, my endless searches through private messages for proof of more lies. We sat like that for an hour, two broken people guided through our wreckage. By the end, I felt something shift. The rawness of our honesty created a fragile bridge across the chasm between us. Emily reached for my hand, just a light touch, and I realized I wanted to hold it, not push it away. Outside the clinic, the city sprawled in midday heat. Taxi horns, distant sirens, the somber hum of life pressing on. We walked back to our car in silence, shoulders brushing, each of us lost in our own thoughts. When we arrived home, I made coffee and set 2 mugs on the kitchen island. Emily hovered by the counter watching me. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for going today." I took a slow sip. "Thank you for telling the truth." Over the next few days, we fell into a new routine. Morning therapy sessions, afternoons spent reviewing the spreadsheet of payments she'd sent me. We traced each transaction back to the usernames, drafting emails requesting removal of every image. Emily sat at my side, phone in hand, writing apology after apology, each one a small promise to stop, to rebuild, to prove she valued our privacy and our marriage above money. I watched her work and admired the way her brow furrowed with determination, the flush in her cheeks when she hit send. It was the first time I'd felt proud of her since I discovered the secret. But I also felt the jagged ache of fear. What if someone refused our request? What if those photos could never be fully erased? One evening, we stayed late at the kitchen table, our laptop open to a private forum where I'd created a burner account. Emily hovered behind me as I posted takedown notices under an anonymous alias. Each time a moderator acknowledged our request, relief flooded me, and it felt like another brick added back to our foundation. But one message refused to vanish, a single image already downloaded by an unknown user. I froze, the cursor blinking on the screen like a heartbeat. Emily touched my shoulder. "Did we get it all?" she asked. I swallowed. "There's one left," I admitted, her face drained of color. "What do we do?" I logged out and closed the laptop. "We fight," I said, though my voice wavered. "We keep calling, emailing, reporting. We don't give up." We stood and embraced, two halves pressed together. The city lights flickered through the window behind us, indifferent to our struggle. In that embrace, I felt both the fragility of our bond and the stubborn spark that still glowed between us. The next morning, Emily woke early to join a webinar on online privacy. As she scribbled notes, I watched her. Her earnest concentration, the fierce set of her jaw. I realized that redemption wasn't just about apologies, it was about action. She was fighting to erase her past mistakes, and with her, I was fighting to reclaim what we'd lost. Our journey was far from over. There would be days when the hurt resurfaced, when trust trembled like a candle flame in the wind. But each time we chose to speak the truth, to take another step together, the path forward felt a little more certain. And for the first time since I saw that photo, I believed that love, even wounded, even scarred, could find its way back home. By midweek, a brittle routine had settled over us. Morning therapy, afternoons hunting down the last traces of those images, evenings collapsing onto the couch, too exhausted even to speak. Yet somehow in that exhaustion, I felt a curious steadiness, like we were finally moving forward instead of circling the same wreckage. That Thursday morning, Emily woke before my alarm and slipped into the living room. I found her at the coffee table, surrounded by notebooks and articles on digital rights. She looked up as I entered, eyes bright. "I signed us up for a workshop on image removal legislation," she said, voice hopeful. "It's next Saturday, but early registration gives us priority support from a legal advocate." I sank into the chair across from her and watched as she explained the finer points of the DMCA takedown process and new privacy laws in California and New York. Her passion stirred something in me. Pride, yes, but more than that, the old spark of partnership. This was her fight now, but I was beside her, every step. Later that afternoon, we sat across from Dr. Patel again. I'd been dreading this session, unsure if I still had tears left to shed. But as Emily recounted our progress and the legal workshop she'd found, I realized that we were no longer bogged down in guilt, but stepping into agency. When it was my turn, I spoke not of hurt, but of resolve. I want to believe that we can redefine our intimacy, that we can rebuild trust, even if it's different from before. Dr. Patel nodded, encouraging us to explore new rituals of connection. "Trust is not binary," she explained. "It's a practice you renew every day." The phrase struck me, practice. It suggested both discipline and hope, like learning a new dance whose steps you haven't memorized yet. That evening, Emily cooked dinner, her version of spicy chicken curry, the one dish I'd always begged her to make. We ate at the kitchen island, chopsticks clicking against bowls, the aroma of cumin and coconut milk filling the apartment. As she watched me take that first bite, relief softened her shoulders. "Is it good?" she asked. "Delicious," I said, and meant it. Afterward, we cleared the dishes together in comfortable silence. I found myself reaching for her hand, and this time she didn't flinch. Our palms pressed, tentative but genuine, as if rediscovering an old map of each other's lines and ridges. On Friday afternoon, a notification pinged on my phone. One of the last hosts had approved our takedown request. The image, our bedroom scene, would be removed within 24 hours. I showed Emily the message, and she let out a choked laugh, half relief, half disbelief. "It's really happening," she whispered. We didn't celebrate with champagne or fanfare. Instead, we stood at the window, looking out over the city skyline as dusk settled. The lights below blinked on one by one, and I felt a calm I hadn't known since this all began. "We did it," I said softly. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We did," she agreed. Saturday came with overcast skies, the promise of rain. We drove together to the legal workshop, navigating winding streets and the flurry of weekend traffic. Inside the community center, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls, dozens of people gathered, clutching laptops and legal pads. Emily and I sat side by side in the front row, our hands intertwined on the folding chair between us. The workshop was a blur of presentations and Q&A. How to issue subpoenas for image removal, best practices for monitoring dark web postings, support networks for victims of privacy violations. Emily took feverish notes, her pen scratching across the page as if trying to outrun her past mistakes. I watched her focus and felt my heart swell. This was the woman I married. Resourceful, courageous, determined. On the drive home, the rain finally came down in earnest, pattering against the windshield. We sat in silence as the wipers swished. I reached out and touched her cheek, damp with raindrops seeping through the cracked window seal. "What now?" I asked, voice gentle. She smiled, that same honest smile I fell in love with. "Now we keep going," she said. "We keep learning, we keep building." And in that moment, I believed her. I believed in us. Our intimacy wouldn't be the same, it would bear the scars of what happened, but it would be ours alone, forged in truth and intention. We would practice trust every day, in therapy, in conversations, in small acts of vulnerability. That night, we lit candles around the living room, soft amber flames flickering against the walls. No photographer's lens, no hidden forum, only the two of us and the warm glow of a new beginning. We slow danced to an old record, arms wrapped around each other in the hush. I closed my eyes and let her heartbeat steady my own, a reminder that love, once broken, can be remade, if you have the courage to hold the pieces and the patience to fit them back together.